Hey folks, this is Kalani. It looks like the dev team is in fact listening when it comes to some major features of the next patch, because the double legendary feature in 9.2 will no longer be tied to a reputation grind. Everyone will be able to get their hands on a second legendary without really having to go out of their way for it. There's also a new type of catch-up gear in Zereth Mortis that was included in this week's PTR build, so let's take a closer look and break it all down. Before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. Let's talk about the changes to the double legendary feature coming in patch 9.2. Now, before this update, we weren't entirely sure how the new legendary belt was going to be acquired. It was just kind of slapped onto the reputation vendor alongside the memory of the new legendary effect, and they both required a revered reputation level with the enlightened brokers before they could be purchased or used. The whole idea of the belt seemed to be the ability to get it earlier than the memory, so you could use the belt until you were able to buy the memory, which would then allow you to create a legendary for any slot with this new double legendary enabling effect. Get the belt earlier, get the memory later for min-max. That didn't make much sense if they were earned at the same time. Well, that intention seems to have been made clearer with a recent blue post, because the legendary belt is going to be removed from the reputation vendor entirely. The new requirements for getting your hands on this new legendary belt are going to be far more straightforward. You just have to work through the new story campaign quests in patch 9.2. There are 8 chapters in total for the new campaign, but the very last chapter is called Epilogue Judgment, so that's probably going to be after the raid to wrap up the entire expansion, including the fate of the jailer and Sylvanas. So really we have 7 chapters of main story, and the belt is now a reward from that final 7th chapter. That means you'll have to complete the entire campaign in patch 9.2, more or less, before you can get your hands on this belt, which allows you to equip 2 legendaries at the same time. So as long as you keep up with the story quests, the legendary belt will more or less just be handed to you for free. So this is going to require significantly less time and effort when compared to the previous revered reputation requirements, and no matter what type of content you prefer to do in World of Warcraft, you're not going to be forced into the rep grinding in this patch. You will be forced into completing the story content, but that's usually part of the course for unlocking new systems anyway, and at least it makes more sense. Something to consider though is that the story chapters are not unlocked all at once. When the patch releases, we expect chapters 1 through 3 to be available, and then it's going to slow down to just 1 chapter per week moving forward. That means that chapter 7 will unlock in the 5th week of the patch. There are a bunch of other unlocks as the weeks go by, so I'll pop something on screen to make it easier to understand. As the raid unlocks and then the mythic difficulty becomes available, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer than that until the legendary can be acquired. That also means that the double legendary feature probably won't have any impact on the world first race, because that's usually over in the first 2 weeks of mythic unlocking. This does mean that no matter what kind of player you are, or how long you spend farming reputation, or how much time you spend in game in general, everyone is going to have to wait at least 5 weeks before they can get double legendaries. That's actually potentially longer than the wait would have been if the revered reputation requirement wasn't changed. People were figuring it would take maybe 4 weeks of rep grinding to hit revered, which is kind of a funny switcheroo. We could end up waiting longer overall, but it's going to take less effort at the same time. The dev team did ask for feedback on these changes, so this could change once again. We'll just have to keep our eyes open when new PTR builds come through. If you're curious about the memory that will allow you to create your new second legendary, the requirements for that have actually changed as well. It's still on the rep vendor, and it still requires revered reputation, so it is locked behind that rep grind, but it now also requires you to complete that same chapter 7 questline that will reward you with a legendary belt. So even if you can get to revered before you complete that questline by grinding your eyeballs to nothing, you still won't be able to buy the memory, because you also need to complete chapter 7 before you can buy it. So this change also enforces the point that you have to get the belt first, and can then go for the memory afterwards if you really want to. How do you feel about these changes as they stand right now? Are you happier waiting longer if it means you don't have to grind for reputation, or would you rather be able to unlock whatever you want at your own pace without any time gates involved whatsoever, even if that meant a huge grind? I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section below. Now moving on, we also have some new ways to gear up in patch 9.2 with some dedicated catch-up gear thrown in for good measure. A new vendor was added that sells tokens that you can use to get a piece of item level 226 gear. Thankfully, the dev team seems to have learned their lesson with completely random tokens, because we're starting off with individual tokens for each slot. Annoyingly, trinkets and rings still share a token. Personally, I think they should be split, because if you actually want a trinket, the chances of getting the trinket you want are so low due to the multiple trinket choices stacked on top of the multiple ring choices. Nobody wants to go through 20 rings and 5 trinkets to finally get the one they want, especially when this gear isn't even that great. Item level 226 is kind of bare bones, just dinged level 60 and need something right now and don't really want to spend money on the auction house kind of item level. The kind of gear you need when you go straight to Zereth Mortis is a fresh dinged 60 and can't kill anything. That's why I call it catch-up gear. It's quick, it's easy, and it gets you caught up to the point where you can start the actual gear progression grind in the new patch. Perfect for alts, great for anyone new to the game, but that's about it. So do us a favor, Blizzard, make a separate trinket token. That would be grand. Now each of these pieces will also set you back 500 anima. That might not be too much for the vast majority of players that have been keeping up with their characters in Shadowlands, but for anyone new to the game, that price point could be a bit of a problem. Thankfully, there are plenty of ways to earn anima in the game now, and a lot of activities in 9.2 will flood you with anima as well, so you should be able to afford as many tokens as you could want with a bit of playtime in the new patch. I still think 500 per token is a bit expensive though, but at least it's not using a new currency from the patch, because you're going to want to spend those in different places. These tokens are also bind on account, so you can send them to any of your alts across your entire account to help gear them up super quickly. That's not the only gearing up option you have as a solo player though. There are actually 2 other types of gear you can work on if you want to bump up your item level. The first one of these comes from the Sandworn Relics vendor. This chappy will sell you gear for almost every slot that uses a new unique currency from Zereth Mortis, Sandworn Relics. We'll get to those in a second. All of this gear is item level 246, which actually isn't too bad for an outdoor content reward. For comparison, the new raid will drop item level 252 in normal mode, so this Sandworn Relic gear is just a tad below the normal raid gear in the new patch. All of this gear has pretty unique transmog too. It's all themed after the brokers, so even if you don't want the gear for its item level, you might want it for its appearance. If you want to run around looking like your favorite broker, this gear is really the only set that will give you the complete look, so you're gonna have to do some farming. Now, I've seen a few people call this stuff catch-up gear, and I really have to disagree. Catch-up gear to me is account bound, it's easy to get, and it's really just there to help players cross the silly item level gap between what you probably would have when you first hit level 60 and what you actually need to feel somewhat safe in the current patch. The BOA tokens that we just talked about fit that bill perfectly. This Sandworn Relic gear does not. Sandworn relics only come from a handful of sources, and it seems to be restricted to the sandy areas of Zereth Mortis. Most of that area is full of elites, so it's going to be harder to run around, and the relics don't drop all that often. You can get a handful of relics for killing rare monsters. You do get about 15 or so from the world boss, but that's going to be once per week, and you can open special chests that have a few more. But honestly, this gear is going to be quite a grind to obtain. The chests seem to be the best source, but they require a lot of mob farming to find key fragments to combine to open the chest, which can take a while, and the chests aren't really farmable, so it's going to be a slow burn by the looks of things. Each piece of gear costs between 160 and 300 Sandworn relics. This isn't something you'll be able to farm quickly if the current acquisition rates don't change, but it is definitely something anyone and everyone can work towards at their own pace, so if you fancy grinding for the transmog or the higher item level gear, this vendor will give you another way to gear up, and it is something you can do by yourself and on your own terms, so it still has its place. And then there's one other gearing up path available to everyone in the new patch, Cypher equipment. This one's a little bit weird because we don't have the full picture just yet, so it's almost like it's not entirely finished on the PTR, but if you played during patch 9.1, you probably know about and understand how the Korthia armaments worked, right? You got Korthia gear, either from tokens or from drops in the zone, and then you could upgrade them by using the catalogued research currency. Those upgrades allowed you to get some pretty high item level stuff when you consider it was all open world content, but the upgrades were quite restrictive, and it was a massive rep grind to be able to fully unlock everything. Well, Cypher Equipment seems to have taken the good parts of that system while removing most of the bad parts. You can get Cypher gear from playing through content in Zereth Mortis, and it starts at a relatively low item level. Right now it seems to be item level 233, not super low but not super high either, but as you progress through the Cypher of the first ones, your Cypher gear will automatically upgrade. You can see here at the top left, I currently have a Cypher Equipment level of 2 out of 6. As you spend more Cyphers and unlock more things in this system, your equipment level will increase, which will then increase the item level of all of your Cypher equipment. There's no extra upgrade steps either. You don't have to spend a bunch of a new currency, and you don't have to pick and choose which gear to upgrade. All of your Cypher equipment item level is tied to this equipment progress here. So when you finally reach 6 out of 6, all Cypher gear, past, present and future, should be its max item level, which is really cool. You'll be able to use the pieces you want, swap them around, and have something to continually progress towards. It also gives you another incentive for unlocking things in the Cypher of the first ones, which also has some interesting rewards and options baked into it. Another cool factor here is that some Cypher equipment will also have special gem slots in them. You can create unique gems by interacting with enhancement consoles after doing a bit of research in the Cypher system, and then these can slot into Cypher equipment. It's a little complicated, but the general idea is that Cypher equipment could end up being very powerful for outdoor content. But we'll talk more about Cypher equipment and exactly how it works when it's more fleshed out on the PTR. There's a lot of question marks here still, but it should still provide casual and solo players a very involved gearing up process with a lot of upgrades to look forward to. But that's it for this video. What do you think about the changes to the double legendary feature? Do you think tying the belt to story quests makes more sense, or would you rather it come from somewhere else? How do you feel about catch-up gear from what you've seen so far? Should those BOA tokens offer higher item level or better progression options, or should catch-up gear only ever reward a bare minimum item level for that patch? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to everyone who subscribed on Twitch. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching, folks. Good luck and have fun, and as always, I'll see you next time.